Okay, so the ultimate mark of a great language teacher isn't actually about how much your students need you, it's how quickly you can get them to stop needing you. Most teachers measure success by how much their students rely on them, but ultimately this is a bit of a mistake. Welcome back to TESOL with Micky and Ida. I'm Micky, and today we're looking at a framework for autonomy called Self-Directed Language Learning, or SDLL. Before we dive in, we need to clear up a major misconception about SDLL, and that's that SDLL is not self-study. It's not about making yourself obsolete as a teacher, and it's not students working in isolation. The ultimate goal is complete learner autonomy, but the autonomous learner is still a deeply social one. In SDLL, the emphasis is on developing the ability to self-direct learning in social contexts. You, as the teacher, provide the necessary support, and you progressively withdraw that support to help the learners become autonomous. Let's start thinking then about what SDLL actually is. So what does it look like in practice? At its heart, SDLL develops your learner's ability to take charge of their own learning. So the point is not that you, the teacher, disappear in some way. The point is that your students become increasingly capable of making good decisions about how they learn. For this to happen, you need to help them develop three things. So the first thing is an increasing awareness of how they can learn effectively. The second is an understanding of their personal learning preferences. Number three is the knowledge of how to apply specific learning strategies to specific problems. But here's the catch. Learners should learn how to learn implicitly. So when you're trying to use this method, you don't want to weigh them down with heavy explicit lectures about strategy. Instead, SDLL is built directly into the fabric of how the whole course should run. Okay, so be honest, how dependent are your students on you right now? Why don't you let me know in the comments underneath? This brings us to a very practical warning. You must introduce a measure of self-direction early on in the language learning process with your learners. Now, why might this be? Well, if you wait, you're going to find it really quite difficult to wean advanced learners away from dependence on you after they've spent years in a traditional teacher-directed classroom. So SDLL isn't about a module which you're going to bolt on to your course. It's a culture which will grow from day to day. Let's think then about the scale of choice in SDLL. So SDLL depends on giving learners the right amount of choice at the right time. We can think of it in terms of levels, and there's 5 of these. So let's start with level 1. Level 1 is task organization, where learners choose how to do a task, for example, in pairs, in groups, or then to do it individually. Level 2 is the task sequencing. So this is where learners decide if tasks should be done in a particular order, or whether they happen in classes versus rather than doing it as homework. Level 3 is about materials and techniques. So learners make informed choices about which text to read, which video to watch, or which vocabulary method to use. Okay, let's move on to level 4. So level 4 is methods. So very advanced learners may actually make choices about teaching and learning methods. And level 5 is the negotiated syllabus. So at the highest level, the entire course content is negotiated with the class. This is actually really rare in standard schools, but very realistic in adult ESP or English for specific purposes. The thought of handing over complete control about what's in the syllabus is really scary to some people, especially if you are more of a traditional teacher or you like to have a lot of control in the classroom. So it's not for the faint of heart. Okay, let's move on and think about what it looks like in practice. One way of getting learners started on the road to self-direction and autonomy is to gradually introduce an element of peer presentation. So learners can present on a topic they know well. So this could be something like a hobby, or it could be something like, I don't know, something from their job. Then they can introduce an element of peer teaching. So to start with, one or more learners can take over the teacher's role for a small part of a lesson, like leading a warm-up or running a short speaking task. A third technique is learner-generated materials. So where learners bring their own materials or media, but remember, the teacher still curates the options early on. So if learners choose one of 4 pop songs to work on, then these must be suitable. So it's not like you as a teacher don't play a role in terms of providing some guardrails. SDLL also heavily relies on peer assessment and self-assessments, which can be successfully introduced even in secondary schools. Part of learner autonomy consists on the ability to assess one's own progress ultimately. This isn't meant to replace teacher assessment, but rather to supplement it so learners can, gain insights that they maybe wouldn't normally have. Okay, so what do autonomous learners actually do? All of this aligns with what we know about successful language learners. So what are good language learners? Good language learners, according to Rubin, are the following. They guess intelligibility and tolerate uncertainty. They have a strong drive to communicate and take risks. They attend to form when it matters, but focus on meaning over surface accuracy, and they actively monitor their own speech and the speech of others. Let's think about the hard part for teachers. So, if we're honest, this method is demanding for many newer or traditional teachers. Control, feels safe for many teachers, and autonomy feels messy. So I don't know how you specifically feel or where or which camp you would put yourself in, but it's worth having a think about. Some teachers may find it difficult to adapt to the role of facilitator in SDLL and to shift from an authority figure to someone who provides scaffolded support. And we have an episode on scaffolding to help you if you want. You can go and find that in our Vygotsky playlist. As part of learning to become autonomous, learners will make mistakes, and that's okay. But it can be a little bit difficult for teachers to accept any kind of wrong choices, and we could probably put that in inverted commas, which learners may make concerning the techniques or the materials that they want to use in the classroom. And for you as a teacher, your instinct might be to jump in and to correct them. But in my experience, you have to try and resist this. So learner choices, to a great extent, just have to be accepted and should not be overruled by the teacher just because the teacher feels a little bit unsure or a little bit uncomfortable. This is about trying to hand over control to students, and maybe they'll make mistakes, but it's for you to think about, is that mistake something which is serious enough for me to overrule, or am I trying to overrule them because I am just uncomfortable with the situation? So something which I always think about when I'm teaching is, am I doing this for the students or am I doing this for myself? Okay, let's move on then to culture and classroom pushback. And here we're thinking finally about the intercultural aspect of this method. So in cultures which place a high value on teacher authority, rote learning, and closely guided practice, this facilitating style may have to be arrived at in easy stages to gradually build it into the curriculum. Also, self-directed classrooms may at first sight seem rather chaotic, and this can scare not just the teacher who we've talked about, but also the learner as well if they're not used to it. Like noise levels may be higher, and there may be more movement of learners compared to the traditional classroom. So this can freak out all kinds of stakeholders. Some learners may prefer to have, a more disciplined classroom. For those students, you can still offer other traditional options within this framework of choice, allowing them to work alone or consult with you when you are needed. So that might be a bit of a compromise. That is SDLL, autonomy but social, choice but staged. support followed by, a gradual withdrawal. If you want to build learners who can survive and thrive without you, this is your practical route to get there. And this is what we should be trying to do as language teachers. We want our learners, surely, to be able to go out into the world and use the language when we're not there. If you are serious about building teacher expertise, then please hit the like button and subscribe to TESOL with Micky and Ida, and we'll see you in the next video.